I will introduce you to Patsy Polly from the University of New South Wales, who is going to lead us in this great session.
Thank you, Candace. Thank you, everyone, for joining. I hope it really is a great session, but let's start off with this image, which is really a wonderful image provided and produced, actually, the artwork produced by Esme Tinbury. It's of our Sydney Harbour Bridge, and it's made from a collection of shells, and it is just magnificent. And what I'd like to do is really acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands that I'm placed on today, and that's the Birrabirragal country, and really acknowledge our past, present and emerging elders, and really understand that they've done a lot to get us here where we are today. All right, so with that, thank you very much for joining. I'd really like to have this session provide us with a collective brainstorm. And the reason why I think a session like this is a good one to have at the end of the day like this, provided by our able community, is that we have a discussion about how we can leverage our strengths and our learnings during these COVID times. Because let's face it, we have gone through quite a bit in terms of change, not only in our workplaces with digital transformation, as we know. I think this is just the basics in terms of what we've achieved. We've also achieved a lot in terms of how we've worked together, how we've banded together to collaborate and find new ways of doing. So the technical aspect is ground zero, but the rest that happens is really where the important future thinking takes place. So I guess there's a series of questions that I'd like us to think about collectively. And this comes back to understanding the place of e-portfolio during COVID-19 times. And the reality of it is that a lot of us at our institution started to think again about e-portfolio. And e-portfolio is an interesting practice, pedagogy, tool, whatever you may like to think about as e-portfolio. It's got so many dimensions. And portfolio was brought in again as a way of thinking and doing during COVID times. So there are 4 questions here, and I'd like to bring up a whiteboard at one point and have us brainstorm and put our ideas down. But if you can just screenshot this, just so you get the questions down, because they may disappear as we use a whiteboard. So firstly, what is happening at your institution? Because there's been a lot of change. 2, activities that you may have found useful during COVID times. And these activities may come down to behaviours even, working together, finding new ways of thinking, and so on. And activities that may stay due to our new COVID-19 induced world. Let's call it that, because as a medical scientist, it's clear to me that the virus is here and it's staying and it's emerging, and viruses have this funny ability to survive by mutating. And you see the variants come out, and we're getting a different wave now of Omicron coming through. So this isn't going away, and neither are the practices that we've learned along the way. So activities that may stay during this time, and the institutions that we work in and collaborate with are turning to e-portfolio practice. And I want us to think about why this is. And is this our time, once again, to shine? Because it has been wave-like and cyclical in terms of portfolio practice, implementation, pedagogy, and so on. And as we've just heard with Kate Coleman's session, it is ever emerging, and it happens to be the case with ePortfolio practice and pedagogy, that as we explore and think and work collaboratively, new ways of doing emerge. And this is the basis of really future thinking and research-based thinking. So I'll just leave you with that thinking as we progress through these 4 questions. So please screenshot this. So you have the questions in your hand. And if I can get a whiteboard up now, it might be a good chance for us to start to share notes. Now, the notes that we will be putting onto that whiteboard will be collected. Okay, so if you don't feel like sharing your thoughts, that's absolutely a-okay, it's fine. But it is for the purposes of bringing this back into discussion tomorrow in day 2 at the conclusion, and also maybe for the practices of resharing with our community and instigating some sort of collaboration across our ABLE community and beyond. So I cannot see my whiteboard on my screen, so maybe I will stop sharing.
Patsy, I can put a whiteboard up.
Oh, that would be
looks like
amazing.
I can do that. And I know I can rely on my colleagues, especially Christine, if we mess up. And then I also wanted to point out, if you hadn't noticed, that, oh, somebody already, okay, I'm going to share a whiteboard, that Kate Mitchell put your questions up in chat. So we will have that.
Thank you, Kate. So I guess
seeing the whiteboard now.
Perfect, Candice. It's amazing. So I guess this is a way of capturing our discussion points, and we may not actually get out to an hour's worth of time, and that's absolutely right. But if we can start the process of if anyone wants to discuss what may be happening at their institution, because I know if I may just lead, at Australian institutions, there's been a big drive towards reshaping assessment practices. And I'm not sure if this is a global phenomenon. I get the feeling it is, that we're starting to shift towards changing the way we assess, especially now that the digital world is really upon us and we have to find new ways of evaluation of student learning and thinking. So if I can invite any people in the audience to add to that concept, whether there's been new things happening at the institution besides the technology, new ways of thinking about assessment, new ways of implementation of pre-existing tools, please. General avoidance of. So fantastic, I can see the slide or the whiteboard being populated. Yes, decreasing student populations. This was an issue, especially for a lot of Australian institutions where we had an international student cohort that was somehow not allowed to enter the country, of course. So that became a real problem, and we really missed our international students during this time. Yes, the new learning and teaching strategy of reemergence of authentic and experiential learning. We have a new Vice Chancellor at the University of New South Wales, and I've heard several times the words lifelong learning. Now, to us, I mean, that sort of made my heart sing. To us in the ePortfolio sphere, lifelong learning has been something that's been foundational to our practices in ePortfolio. Faculty and staff layoffs. Now, this has been a massive problem at Australian universities. You may have realised that some of us went radio silent during the initial stages of the pandemic. That's because we were pretty much overloaded with work, and it was because not only because of the digital transformation and the quick shift to online, but because we sadly lost a lot of our colleagues along the way. So we were covering as best we could. Interesting what's happening at the institutions. There is a general avoidance of new initiatives. There are so many new initiatives coming through. I don't know if everyone else is feeling this, but it's almost to the point now where people like me are saying, please, no more. Let's just get what we've got working and make sure that we can sustain it. So, colleagues, I'm just picking up, as you can see, some of the thoughts that are coming up on the whiteboard. If anyone would like to add any words, discussion besides what's on the whiteboard, that would be great. The interesting concept of emotional and physical labour and gendered experience. Definitely tough on folks with young families, trying to work remotely, working in spaces that were not adaptable for working online and, you know, teaching online. Very difficult. Finding new ways to engage students beyond Zoom. It's very hard to engage students, I think, now coming into the third year. Okay, very hard. So I find that breakout rooms are great and task allocation is fantastic, but for me now, coming back into the classroom has been very, very important, especially with lab-based learning. Okay, those of us who work in maker spaces or laboratory spaces where you need to do the hands-on, it's been absolutely critical that we come back. So any other comments or questions? Okay, Mitchell, you've turned your microphone on.
Oh, sorry, that was unintentional.
Oh, I was hoping it was intentional.
Oh, okay.
Amazing.
I've chucked a whole heap in there. Did you want me to talk to something?
Just talk to something that really was interesting in terms of happening at your institution.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Kate.
Well, I mean, I'm on a particular project to implement ePortfolios, so that has happened out of the pandemic, that we actually purchased an ePortfolio platform. And that's also, I think there was sort of an early strategy 2019 that was sort of suggested around authentic and experiential learning, and then it kind of got shelved a little bit with the pandemic, and now that's seeing real interest again. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with that. Obviously, like everybody else, we've seen a lot of international students still stuck overseas. Staff increase the use of blended learning, which has been great, but you know, I'm really conscious about the challenges that people have, just in terms of like not burdening people with too much, and the fatigue that is probably setting, you know, well, definitely setting in by this stage.
Definitely fatigue setting in at this stage. And I'm, you know, some of the initiatives and the things that the technologies that are being brought in, is this a knee-jerk reaction, or are these things here to stay? I certainly hope a lot of them are here to stay, because people have put in a lot of work to get them going. I've got a comment here which is really interesting. Increased AAPI harassment. Can anyone speak to that, who put that comment up? Very interesting.
Yeah, I can speak to it. It stands for Asian American Pacific Islander. They've been following along the Southern Poverty Law Center and other activist groups who are who are monitoring this. And I'm speaking particularly about, sadly, US campus experience, but because of my deep ties and friendship to international student community, there's been sadly an upswing that's been linked to our COVID realities indirectly via bias.
Isn't that interesting, Sheila? So there's another comment here that says more empathy for students, but that empathy is not always paired with action. So maybe that sort of feeds into that, or is that your comment as well?
Yeah, there's much to be discussed about intent and impact and our work to be done. Certainly so much work to be done.
Incredible. So colleagues, thank you. There's been so much here in terms of thinking about what's happening at our institution, at our institutions, and, you know, things like compounded disparity, finding the balance between going back to normal and embracing the new normal. I know personally, when I was trying to run hybrid lab lessons, my goodness, trying to go back to normal, what is normal? That was very, very difficult. Trying to engage all students, be very fair in the way you were operating these sorts of lessons. And to be honest with you, it wasn't working very well. And I would feed back and say, look, I'm a fairly, you know, experienced instructor, but I'm struggling. So the support systems still need to be in place. It's not enough to say, let's go hybrid. For example, that's something that we're thinking about at our institution, but what else do we need to make it fly, to make it useful for everybody, especially our students? So amazing commentary here. Thank you very much. I think now we'll move on to the second question, because there's a lot, I mean, I won't say it's negative, but there's a lot, I can see there's a lot of issues coming up at our institutions, and issues of, I think issues and weaknesses are not so bad because they give us something to work on. Now, the issues that cannot be resolved, that's another question. But let's move on to the activities that you found useful during COVID time. So I'm the wrong person to be running this whiteboard. Okay.
Anyone who wants to reference it, it's also back in your Zoom window. There's a tab that says whiteboards, and everyone has it saved in theirs. So everybody's got it still. It didn't go anywhere.
Okay, Kate, thank you. That's awesome. Okay, so the next question. Activities that you found useful during COVID-19 times. Flexibility. Wow, what a concept. So the flexibility issue was, I think, fantastic in terms of not only the way we were working, but also, I think, also giving students a bit of flexibility with assessment deadlines and things like this. You know, I found that we were working together with students more and more. I'm not sure if other colleagues found the same effect. Zoom meetings. And the flexible course delivery was fantastic as well. So we found new ways of doing. What I can bring to the table is we always had student presentations, of course, like research type presentations live for honours or research internships, for example, or even within undergraduate courses. They were live and, you know, each team member would speak and so on. But all of a sudden we had to go online. So how did we do this? Students asked if they could work collaboratively but record their sessions. And it worked fantastically. I was open to that. Any way we could manage to get this new way of doing, I was very happy to go ahead and work like this with our students. Students were happy, instructors were happy, And in the end, we produced something that was quite amazing. And the digital expertise by our students, just demonstrated by them, was phenomenal. So, e-portfolios instead of poster sessions. Can someone speak to that? Because poster sessions, in what context?
I can speak to that. There were a lot of the science and engineering programs, etc., especially oftentimes would have poster sessions at the end of a semester, and it would be literally a poster of 3 foot by 4 foot on foam core printed, and they put it on an easel, and then everyone walks around. Of course, during COVID, it couldn't be done, and then so people were starting to create portfolios instead, and they were actually so much richer and better. And they can put in multimedia, they can put in videos of the experiments and their hypothesis, etc. So that was really great.
It's amazing that you raised that, Jeff, because portfolios in STEM are really becoming a thing now, right? And I also believe that part of that thing is giving the tribes in STEM, and I'm one of those tribe members, time to learn how to reflect, okay? Because we're always used to producing something, but the reflective bit seems to get bypassed a bit. So the portfolio work and having time to think about the sorts of artifacts you want to upload into that portfolio system is fantastic. I like the idea also of authentic assessment and portfolios replacing proctored exams. Just a bit of a conversation piece. At the University of New South Wales, we don't have proctored exams. So that's why I guess there's a bit of discussion around assessment, reimagining assessment and assessment redesign. So it's been something that's been discussed a lot, and I think the activities, even though we went online very quickly with regular types of exam assessments, now we're reimagining them. And I think that's been a useful shift, to be honest. What else can we, so much. The SLO scholarship, who put that one up? Can someone speak to that concept?
That was me.
Of course it was, Kate Coleman.
I think that SLO scholarship for my students and for my colleagues meant that we actually took the time to think through what it is that we were wanting to explore. I think that so much sped up for us. And I don't know what the Northern Hemisphere is like, but Australian universities have been hit very, very hard by mass redundancies. Tens of thousands of academic and professional staff have been just wiped out of universities in the last 2 years. And so things got really fast, but the slower we could do our scholarship, the more time we could spend on what it is that we were trying to develop, the better. And it's given us better opportunities to think about what educational research is for and why it matters.
I think that's an incredibly important point, Kate. From my end, a lot of the lab-based research slowed right down because we were physically shut out of the labs, so we couldn't enter them. But that caused a lot of people to think differently about the sorts of direction they wanted to take. So it's true what you say, but also time to revisit the research that they had already produced and develop it and report it. So people were working really deeply behind the scenes to work on what they had produced already and report that, but also reimagine how to go forward. Okay, so what are people's thoughts on open book exams? Any ideas on that? I've got my own thinking, but I don't want to hog the floor too
I've
much.
always felt like they're more like real life, so let's do it.
It's interesting, isn't it? A lot of people, there's the thing about, you know, people working together behind the scenes to produce their responses in an open book exam. And Kevin's just put something in a chat, assessment for learning rather than assessment of learning. I'm going to say this out loud. Coercion and working together, you know, they may have a bit of an overlap there. I think if students collaborate on a question in an open book exam that is geared towards collaboration and producing something in an exam, it may be a different way of assessment. But I also found the problem with open book exams in the way they've been set up now is that students use a common Google Doc that has been produced in a tutorial, and there's a bit of cutting and pasting of that information. So it's not ideal, but behind the scenes, when you do have collaboration to produce those responses, that bit is ideal. So, virtual e-portfolio showcase events. Who put that one up? I'd like to end with that one because I love that.
So that was me.
Yay!
And I have to say, that's something that I think we are continuing. So we had to introduce them when we were all remote. And actually we've kept them because it's given us an opportunity to engage more people, especially alumni, employers, recruiters who are not physically close to campus or aren't even returning to campus for now, you know, career fairs and things like that, which have also gone online. And so, and then people can stop in. They can come by for a little bit and just see a couple portfolios and then go. We've tried to introduce Jamboards as a way for people who can't come to our events to actually provide asynchronous feedback, mixed success there. And then I think some people still definitely miss the direct engagement with students, being able to talk with students and engage with them. So there are definitely pros and cons, but overall, we've had a much bigger turnout for our showcase events as a result.
It's really interesting, Helen, because in a lot of situations, there are financial barriers to getting to conferences, let's face it. And this breaks it down. This does break it down. The issue is the physical face-to-face contact, especially for early career researchers and making those important networks. So I find that depending on the stage of where you're at in your career, it may have a different impact on, you know, whether it's positive or negative. But yeah, definitely it has opened up the world and it has made things more available and accessible to a lot of different types of people who may or may not generally have attended these sorts of forums. So yeah, very interesting. So someone could capture this whiteboard before I destroy it unintentionally, of course. Fantastic. Done. Go, Kevin. And Candice, do you want to change pages? Because now I've lost my confidence completely.
Okay. There's a new page.
Oh my goodness. So how do I get to that new page? Someone said I turn the page, but
Do you not see the page? You see the
No.
old page?
I see the old page.
Patsy, it's at the if you look in the left-hand screen where you have your sticky notes and all of your things. At the bottom, you have a tool, and click that, and then you can get to the next page.
Fantastic. Thank you. I love learning. I love learning new things like this because it helps. It helps you in your everyday life, especially when you're trying to teach with Zoom. So activities, the third question, activities that may stay due to our new COVID-induced world. What do people think is going to hang around? What do we think is going to stay with us?
Hey guys, it's Gerard, the e-portfolio specialist here in John Jay College.
And hi, I'm Gabrielle.
Hello.
Sorry.
Portfolio.
And today we're going to show you how to get the new Elden Ring.
I'm very sorry.
First thing you got to
I clicked on a link.
Sure. No, that's not the stream that we're doing today.
So what do you think is going to stay? What would you like to see stay? Online advising. It's so true. I think we finally explored the use of digital tools properly. Okay, just in this particular session, I have learnt how to turn a page in Zoom. So, you know, things like this that sound trivial are very helpful in our day-to-day lives now, in our new day-to-day lives. So videos and lecture recordings, how fantastic to have the flexibility to go back. Now, we had lecture recordings before, but I'm sure people were not as, not using the lecture recordings as best they could. They may have accessed them maybe once or twice, but now we do our lecture recordings in Teams. They're in our Teams site. There's so many resources there. It's so supportive in terms of getting your digital capability up. Accessibility concerns. We do have the transcript captured and different types of functionality that helps with learners that need more than just a recording. This has been fantastic. Now, with the Omicron outburst, again, the new BA.4 and 0.5 variants, we have now been given another chance to work in a flexible manner and work remotely again. So again, more options are coming. We've seen that this can work. In the past, we were told, no, you've got to show up. You've got to be present for it to work. While there could be some activities where you need to be there, sure, like working in a lab or makerspace where you've got physical work to do, remote work can continue. And I think also the focus on well-being and mental health has been important because the pandemic has exacerbated that. We've been empathetic, we've been careful, we've been supportive more than before. So this has been a great thing to see. But then again, maybe the pandemic just really exaggerated effects that may not have come to light. I think the playfulness of our behaviour has been very important too. I know I'm more relaxed about the way I interact online, and you've seen today, normally 3 years ago, I would have just imploded if I couldn't get a whiteboard up. Now it's more of a discussion on who can help me out. And more often than not, there's someone there in the audience to work with. Multimodal assessment and teaching. Who put that one up? Can I have someone speak to that a bit more? So anyone who put that one up? Sorry. Go, Kat.
I've seen a big shift in the way that people are thinking around modalities and literacies. You know, so how might I be able to present that content? How do I create opportunities for learning that content? And how do students evidence that that learning through assessment? So it's not necessarily e-portfolios, even though I would locate it in portfolio learning because it's reflective and created and curated. But it is a shift to this kind of multimodality, you know, so that the academic written language is not the only way to present evidence of learning. I'm actually able to demonstrate that via short videos, via developing sonics and podcast responses. Like, I just think that that's a beautiful shift, and that even though my campus has snapped back to face-to-face teaching and pretended that the pandemic's over, that the multimodality and multiliteracy teaching hasn't gone away. And I think that it's a good opportunity to think differently.
Totally agree with you, Kate. We've got colleagues at Griffith University that are teaching physiology via Instagram. It's incredible. I was blown away, and the following and the way to deconstruct information in bite-sized pieces has been very powerful. So I don't think there would have been as much of an uptake had it not been for the pandemic or acceptance of this. Now, we're also talking about, using these sorts of modalities and talking about them in promotion cases, like cases for academic promotion. There's still approaches to disseminating information to reach your audience. And if your learners are accepting this and experiencing it in a positive way, I think this is very powerful. So DEIBD, can someone speak to that, please?
I put that up, but I think there are other experts here that can speak a lot more about it.
Yep. Kate Mitchell or Christina, you had some comments in the chat. Chat's got
no, Jeff, please do go ahead. It shouldn't just be the evil ethics task force to talk about that concept. I'd be very interested to hear your take on it and how that is important for you going forward in the activity.
I mean, I'm really just a student at this, and I'm really grateful that Abel's putting up a whole track on just doing the ethics task force work. I think that for a lot of the portfolios I've seen in the last couple of years, there have been perhaps a departure from what looked like a sort of a professional profile. Is that people are doing projects that are very driven by a social concern or concerns that they have in their mind, and those projects are the portfolio. It's not even about that person anymore. So I think there was one of the students that I saw present had during COVID created a peer mentoring program for the LGBTQ plus community in his school, and that was not for credit, that's not for a course, and it became really successful, and it's actually going to a different school now. This spreading, but it's these types of projects I think are starting to sort of take on a whole different other potentials, I think, for portfolio work. Sorry, I hope that didn't take too long.
Oh, fantastic. Anyone else like to add more to that? Okay, then we should move to the fourth and final question. If we can change page, go over to 4. Wow. Fourth question. Many institutions are now turning to e-portfolio practice. Now, for those of us in the room, we're happy to see this, okay? Do we know why, apart from assessment? The big A word, because everyone's turning to e-portfolio as an assessment solution. Is it our time to shine again? Yes and no.
Patsy, I don't see that at all. In fact, I think it's related to that initiative fatigue. So I think people are withdrawing, and at least in the institutions I've been affiliated with, from doing e-portfolio work, because it does feel like it's an extra burden and difficult to convince people that, I mean, they're just burned out. So that hasn't been my experience in the institutions that I've been at. And it's great if it's at other places. I'd like to learn from that.
And adding to that, I would say, rather than characterizing it as shine again, Patsy, it might be just adding more fuel to the fire to increase the glow, something like that. But I don't see, at least in the United States, the adoption curve hasn't really reached past a certain threshold. We haven't, I mean, if you look at learning management systems are being used by 95% of faculty, web conferencing tools like Zoom are definitely increased during the pandemic at a great rate, so that it's almost on par with that. But ePortfolios, even with them being used by half to 2/3 of the programs in my institution, I wouldn't say that it's a comprehensive effort. I wouldn't say that it's got the same backing or support that other academic technologies do. And so whatever the reason, shine again, I would say, let's shine it up, or brighten the view, whatever metaphor you want to use.
Yeah, I think it is time to shine it up in a way. Kate Mitchell.
I was just going to add to Kevin's point, in the sense of, I guess, like, in some ways I'm trying to be hopeful, but like, I'm just like, you know, we've all seen it before. I think the main issue is that people, you know, as opposed to the LMS, which kind of, you know, a lot of us are drawn to e-portfolios because we can see that they're the aligns with our pedagogy, but people, you know, a lot of people don't know what to do with e-portfolios, and especially an e-portfolio platform. When you go in, it's often not clear in the same way that an LMS is. And so unless you've already got an understanding of the practice and are kind of pedagogically aligned, which is why, you know, I think a lot of us seek out those things rather than, do you know what I mean? And so I think maybe there's a, you know, there's both that sponsorship and resourcing and getting buy-in from leadership at the institution, but there's also, I think, a little bit of a marketing and comms piece around the pedagogy and the technology that really needs to happen. And it won't always be for everybody, but I think it's also just hard in that people kind of don't, you know, it takes a bit of work to get it, and I don't know how well we do in terms of communicating that value. And that's something that kind of came up in, you know, in our one a bit as well. So
it does take a lot of work, and I think, you know, suggesting that ePortfolio is a solution could be a knee-jerk reaction, especially if people at a management position don't really understand how much work is involved to get it right. Any other comments? I've lost my whiteboard. Sorry, I disappeared for a tick because of my Wi-Fi.
Looks like another Kate has something to say.
Mm-hmm.
So many Kates. Yes, so I'm still relatively new to the field, but have been working on this for a couple of years. And one of the things that is giving me equal amounts of frustration and hope right now is that our ePortfolio initiative that was meant to really be more campus-wide, more integrated, really thoughtful, is doing exactly what Candace and Kevin have noted. Just people are withdrawing, they're pulling back. But now as we're beginning to introduce ePortfolio as a broad idea that any instructor could implement in any way that they see fit and not as a campus initiative, we're starting to see these instructors come out of the woodwork and say, this would be really great for my major, or this would be really great for my one class. And it gives me hope that there is something under the surface where folks are realizing that this will ultimately be useful and that we can scale up. But it's also so frustrating that we introduced it at a campus-wide level and nobody took it, right? And that when we sort of scaled it out and thought about it and put a ton of work into it, nobody wanted it. But then when, you know, one person comes up with it, now, oh, let's do it. You know, so it's that equal sense of, I see hope on the horizon that Patsy's talking about, but it's got to be kind of trucking through the muck of the politics of it, and at this point I'm really excited to do the muck in order to get to the good stuff at the end. So I think there's a little bit of both.
I love going through the mud. I don't know about anyone else, but it's how you get some clarity in the end. Look, it's true. I can speak basically from the academic perspective. You know, when you do something that works, other people want to do it too. And it's as simple as that. So, but if you're asked to do it from top down, most people don't want to take it up. It's a bizarre behavior, but that's what I've realized in my journey through academia. Jeff, you've got your hand up.
Oh, hi. I see some interesting strategies that has been sort of going on that's not so much about, you know, an increased use of ePortfolio, but perhaps a shift in how the technology gets used. And by that, I mean that some people actually sort of taking the concepts behind, you know, portfolios, but they don't call it a portfolio anymore. So, you know, like, so if you're doing a project-based learning thing, if it's a lab, it's a scientific journal, if it's a study abroad project, whatever that might be, sometimes people are basically just dropping the word ePortfolio so that the professors who are maybe doing that, they are not looking at, I'm doing a study abroad program, I have to now learn how to do ePortfolio. Instead, you're giving them a tool to do study abroad. It just happens to have all of the features of an ePortfolio, and they get to enjoy all of the pedagogical, you know, values that it comes with it. So maybe it gets sort of used more, but disguised as something else as well.
I love it. Disguised as something else. Is this the future? Kate Coleman, you've got your hand up.
I'm so very happy to follow Jeff, because I think that is what's occurring, at least in my experience here. I, you know, even for convening the ePortfolio Australian conference, I asked colleagues on the committee to go back and have a look at things that they presented 10 years ago and do it again, because for this reason, that there is a shift not to a tool, but to a practice. And that's the shine up piece, at least what is happening in Australia. So we don't need to talk about portfolio pedagogy so much, because we're seeing lots of creation and curation, because Australia is in a massive decolonizing curriculum space. So we are shifting our very Western colonized perspectives in knowledge making, knowledge construction, knowledge creation, to open up to our Indigenous ways of knowledges and ways of knowing. And in that decolonization, there's a shift in practice around what matters in learning. And what matters in learning is that student needs, student experience, and student evidence has become reified. And that's a really, really important shift. So it's not about plugging in a tool, it's about shifting practice. And what we've seen, at least in the uptake of ePortfolios here, is that they're buying tools institutionally that enable a practice shift, enable that, not a pedagogical one. And I think that seems like it's a kind of nuance, but it's not. I think it's a really important thing to pay attention to, because it isn't about the tool at all anymore, like we've all talked about. It is about not necessarily even disguising, but being slippery about the ways that practices look. You know, you need to collect evidence of that. Well, here's the container for that, or here's the portal for that, and I think that this is, at least in this space right now for us, because of decolonizing and what it means to decolonize assessment, what it means to shift hierarchies of knowledge and power, Australia is in that really interesting point. And it might not be everywhere else, but it is an important thing to pay attention to here. And we might be able to very much contribute into what ePortfolio practice looks like globally more because that has happened. And then that's an important shift to pay attention to.
Unreal. So thank you very much for all that commentary. It is an important shift to pay attention to. I'm happy to hear that pedagogy practice is back in vogue, because I've been doing portfolios without a platform for years. So I'm happy to hear this from my perspective. And also I'll be talking a little bit about that during the Ignite session, how we came together as a group at UNSW talking about pedagogy rather than the tool itself. So colleagues, what an amazing 1 hour that we've had. How lucky are we to talk the talk about ePortfolios and talk about it together across continents, remotely in our, I won't say in our socks, but maybe I'm in socks, coming in from our homes or wherever we're beaming in from. It's been an amazing 1 hour. Thank you very much for all your contribution. I hope that the last screen has been captured because I disappeared unintentionally due to terrible Wi-Fi connection. Now, all of this, hopefully, I will collate and bring it back to you this same time tomorrow. So we have day 2 of our discussion where we do a bit of try to use the portfolio words, collect, reflect, curate the information that we've brainstormed about today. So thank you very much for all your contributions. As Kate Mitchell has indicated, we have come to time, and I might just advertise and shamelessly plug the ePortfolio Forum, the Australian one in October, which will be a continual, another continued conversation of what we're talking about today. And the other wonderful thing that's happened out of this pandemic is all of our ePortfolio societies and communities have merged. I wouldn't even say come together. We've overlapped and merged in places. And we've been trying to do this for a while, I think, and now it's happened. So it's wonderful. So any closing comments, thoughts? Ninja ePortfolio Amoeba.
Thanks so much, Patsy, for leading us through this activity. And I do hope people will return tomorrow, and even more people return tomorrow afternoon or evening or wherever it is in your time zone. Morning. Okay. Yeah. So thank you again. And hopefully we'll see all of you tomorrow.
Yes, please.
One session or another.
Thanks, you, Candice.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
All the best.
Bye.